sentiment. Drake Keeler of IX Basketball made an X post that read, Kurt Miller said he's already received more calls about potential trades for the number 1 pick in the upcoming draft than he did in the lead up to the 2025 draft. So teams,
get this, the phones are already ringing off the hook. We're talking about multiple teams, and they aren't just making casual calls about any old draft pick. No, they are dialing in about the number 1 overall selection in the 2026 WNBA draft. Kurt Miller, the general manager for the Dallas Wings, just dropped a bombshell. He's already gotten way more trade inquiries for this year's top spot than he did for the past 2 drafts combined. And when he spelled out the reason, he mentioned one name, Caitlin Clark. That right there tells you absolutely everything you need to know about how a truly franchise-altering superstar completely changes the math on what draft assets are worth.
There was not going to be a trade. Paige was not going to be traded, but it will be interesting, and it makes our job fun to listen to those calls that come in for the number 1 pick, and we'll do what's best for our franchise. So teams are calling about the number 1 pick more so this year than in the past, because when the Indiana Fever got the number 1 pick, there was no point in you calling the Indiana Fever. They were never trading away the number 1 pick, which was Caitlin Clark. That pick.
Listen to what Miller actually laid out. Back in 2024, when the Indiana Fever held that number 1 pick, nobody even wasted their time calling. I mean, why would you? The entire world knew Caitlin Clark was going to be the first name called. There was a 0% chance that Indiana was ever going to trade that pick away. It was the same exact situation in 2025 when Dallas had the top selection and Paige Bickers was the clear-cut choice. Miller's phone was dead silent. But now, now things are different. Teams are circling like sharks because this specific draft class doesn't feature that one single, undeniable, generational player. And all of that uncertainty is what opens up a world of opportunity. The lottery results were announced back on November 23rd, and it handed Dallas their second straight number 1 pick. They're going to be choosing from a pool that includes UConn's Azzi Fudd, USC's Kiki Iriafen, UCLA's Lauren Betts, Notre Dame's Olivia Miles, and a bunch of other very skilled prospects. But this is the key to why this whole scenario is completely different from the last couple of years.
Let's take a look at this here. See, even in this mock draft, so there's a mock draft here on ESPN, right? And even in this mock draft, they have the Dallas Wings taking Azzi Fudd with the number 1 overall pick. Now, I do like Azzi Fudd. She has gotten better to me. I didn't know. She definitely started shooting the ball. I saw her shoot the ball off the dribble a little bit better. But for the most part, she's a catch and shoot, knockdown shoot.
The early ESPN mock draft has already penciled in Azzi Fudd going first overall to Dallas. And look, on paper, it makes a ton of sense. She's Paige Becker's former teammate and girlfriend from their time at UConn, so bringing them back together in Dallas would generate immediate chemistry and, let's be honest, probably move a ton of merchandise. Fudd's shooting has taken a big step forward this season, and she's looking more comfortable creating her own shot off the dribble, even if she is still mostly a catch-and-shoot threat. But then Minnesota gets the number 2 selection, and they're in a prime spot to grab Kiki Iriafen. Just stop and picture that roster for a minute. They've already got Nafisa Collier, Alana Smith, Courtney Williams, Kaylin McBride, and Bridget Carlton, which is one of the most complete cores in the entire league. Now you add a versatile forward like Iriafen, who can put the ball in the hoop from all over the floor. You're not just looking at a playoff team anymore. That is a squad that could immediately contend for a championship. Then Seattle is on the clock at number 3, and Olivia Miles is the perfect fit for them. You pair her up with Jewel Lloyd in that backcourt, and all of a sudden, the Storm have their point guard for the next generation playing next to one of the best scorers in the WNBA. That is a foundation you can build a contender around for the next decade.
But I'm not like super sold on Azzi Fudd as the number 1 pick, but Dallas Wings, it makes sense. Our fam would make the most sense to me. Lauren Betts would make some. I'm not a Lauren Betts guy either, by the way. So, but I get it if they do it. You want to get a big, I get it. Me personally, I would go Our Fam over Lauren Betts any day of the week. I personally like Flau'jae more than Azzi Fudd, but it is.
Washington is sitting with the 4th pick in this mock scenario, and they're projected to select Lauren Betts. Now, here's where things start to get really interesting. Betts is a massive 7-foot center who absolutely owns the paint. But the big question is, how does she fit alongside Aaliyah Edwards, who Washington is already developing? Edwards is a physical player who can score down low and showed some serious promise in her rookie year. Bringing in another traditional center could end up creating a logjam and spacing problems, instead of actually solving anything. Then you have Chicago picking 5th, and the mock draft projects them to take Sonia Citron out of Notre Dame. But here is the major story that no one seems to be addressing. Where does Angel Reese fit into any of this? The dynamic between Reese and the Chicago Sky organization completely fell apart after she made those public comments criticizing the team. As soon as she aired that dirty laundry, you could tell the front office basically checked out on her. You simply don't draft another young forward prospect if you still have plans to build your franchise around Angel Reese. It's clear that something there has to break.
You have to take her, but I don't love Lauren Betts next to Kiki Area-Finn. And I like the other big they got. She wear the red hair sometime. Light-skinned chick with the tattoos. I just blanked on her name. My apologies. But she's nice. But I mean, if Lauren Betts is there at 6'7", I guess you got to take her. Flau'jae, see. Now, the Chicago Sky have to get rid of Angel Reese. You can't bring in Flau'jae Johnson and still have Angel Reese when we know they don't really click like that anymore.
Which brings us to the real. This is where the real intrigue begins. Multiple front offices are calling Dallas to talk about trading for that number 1 overall pick. So the big questions are, who is on the other end of that line? And maybe even more importantly, what kind of offers are they putting on the table? Chicago seems like the most obvious candidate to make an aggressive move. They hold the 5th pick in this draft, and they also have Angel Reese, a player who just won Rookie of the Year in 2024, but whose relationship with the franchise is completely broken. Could Chicago put together a package deal with Reese and the 5th pick to jump all the way up to number 1? A move like that would fix several problems at once. Dallas would get a proven young star who just put up a double-double average as a rookie, and they would still have a top 5 selection to use. Chicago gets to hit the reset button with any prospect they want and can finally move on from a situation that has clearly become toxic. The logic works, the motivation is there for both teams, and it would perfectly explain why Kurt Miller is getting so many calls this year after getting none for the past 2. But there's another team that should be burning up the phone lines: Minnesota. The Lynx have the 2nd pick, which most people think means they'll take Kiki Area-Finn. But what if they actually prefer Azzi Fudd? What if they think Fudd's elite shooting is a better complement to their system than Area-Finn's all-around game? Minnesota could pitch Dallas a package centered around future draft picks, maybe a veteran player, and their 2nd overall selection. In that scenario, Dallas just moves down 1 spot, still gets a fantastic prospect in Area-Finn, and picks up extra assets for the future.
I wouldn't be surprised if Chicago are trying to trade Angel Reese for the number 1 pick. The Chicago Sky are probably trying to pair Angel Reese and not this number 5 pick, but Angel Reese and another pick for the number 1 pick. Send Angel Reese to Dallas, get him another pick, or send Angel Reese at number 5 to Dallas, and you get the number 1 pick. Something, I don't know, but I think the Chicago Sky are definitely one of the teams putting in calls.
Now let's zoom out and talk about why this is a much bigger deal than just draft night positioning. The WNBA is about to go through a massive expansion phase. The league is adding new franchises, and that means expansion drafts are on the horizon. When that happens, having a stockpile of high-value assets, whether it's draft picks or young players on cheap rookie deals, gives you incredible protection and flexibility. For example, if Dallas trades that number 1 pick for Angel Reese and Chicago's 5th pick, they suddenly have 2 lottery-level talents on team-controlled contracts for the next several years. That isn't just valuable for building a winner, it's also valuable for having assets you can either protect or use as leverage when expansion comes. The same exact logic applies if they trade down 1 spot with Minnesota and collect future picks. The Caitlin Clark comparison that Miller brought up is what really exposes the entire strategy here. Clark was an untradeable asset, not just because of her insane talent, but because of her cultural gravity and the revenue she generates. She literally changed the financial valuation of the Indiana Fever overnight. Paige Bueckers has a similar level of star power, Maybe not quite on Clark's ridiculous level, but she's still a proven star with a massive, dedicated following.
To try to get rid of Angel Reese. Here it says Toronto Tempo getting Tania Latson, Cody McMahon, Gianna Neepkins. Okay, they don't have that girl from Maryland in here no more. Good, because she stinks. Kiki Rice, I'm not sold. I'm not sold. But this is very, very interesting here, man. Get down in the comments. Let me know what y'all think about this.
But here's the thing. None of the prospects in the 2026 class have that kind of profile just yet. Azzi Fudd is incredibly talented and has a well-known name from her time at UConn, but she is not commanding the same level of attention as Caitlin Clark. Kiki Iriafen is an extremely skilled player, but doesn't have a huge national media footprint. Lauren Betts is a force in college games, but hasn't really broken through into the mainstream conversation. Olivia Miles has all the potential in the world, but she's still working her way back from some serious injury concerns. This lack of a single, obvious, transcendent superstar is precisely what makes the #1 pick so tradable this year. Kurt Miller isn't sitting on a golden ticket like Indiana was with Clark, or like Dallas themselves had with Booker's. He's holding a very valuable asset in what looks to be a deep and relatively balanced draft class, and that is exactly when a smart GM starts picking up the phone and listening to what other teams have to say. The other huge factor that nobody is really talking about is that Dallas already has Paige Bookers. They have their cornerstone, their franchise player locked in. Sure, adding Azzi Fudd would create a dynamic backcourt, but it's not absolutely essential for their long-term success in the same way that getting that first superstar was. Dallas has the luxury of being creative because they're now building around an established foundation instead of desperately searching for one. And what makes this whole situation so fascinating from a league-wide view is that the WNBA has never really seen this level of draft pick intrigue before. In the past, teams with top picks pretty much took the obvious player or made some minor moves. But now we're seeing front offices become more sophisticated, more aggressive, and more comfortable using the kind of asset management strategies that have been common in the NBA for decades. Kurt Miller mentioning Caitlin Clark was no accident. He's signaling to the rest of the league that he gets the difference between untouchable generational talents and assets that are valuable but can be moved. He's basically putting up a giant sign that says his phone is on and he's ready to talk. That's just smart business. Think about what happened with Clark in Indiana. The Fever went from being an afterthought to the hottest ticket in sports practically overnight. They sold out arenas, shattered viewership records, and Clark's rookie season created more revenue and buzz than anyone could have possibly imagined. That's the kind of impact that makes a draft pick completely untouchable. You're not just selecting a player at that point, you're transforming the entire economic reality of your franchise. Paige Bookers is going to have a similar effect in Dallas, even if it's not quite as extreme. She's already boosting ticket sales and merchandise interest before she's even played a single professional game. Dallas absolutely made the right decision to keep that pick and take her. But this year is different. Azzi Fudd is a good, potentially great player, but she isn't going to single-handedly restructure the league's financial landscape. The same goes for Iriafen, Betts, Miles, and the rest of the players in this class. They are excellent basketball players who will have long, productive careers, and several will likely become all-stars. But none of them are bringing what Clark and Bookers bring to the table. So Dallas has choices. They can draft Fudd and lean into the whole UConn reunion story with Booker. That has real marketing power and could create an elite backcourt for years. Or they can trade the pick, get a haul of assets in return, and speed up their rebuild in a totally different way. The Chicago scenario is still the one that makes the most sense. Angel Reese averaged 13.6 points and 13.1 rebounds as a rookie. Those are elite numbers. Yeah, her relationship with the Sky went south, but that doesn't change her talent. If Dallas can get Reese plus the 5th pick, they add an immediate contributor who fits perfectly with Booker's skill set, and they still get a lottery talent like Sonia Citron or whoever else they like at number 5. For Chicago, moving on from Reese and jumping from 5 to 1 lets them draft their new cornerstone and get a fresh start. Maybe they want Fudd's shooting, or maybe they'd prefer Iriafen's versatility. Either way, they get to build around a new young core without the drama. The Minnesota angle is a bit more of a long shot, but it's still possible. If the Lynx are truly sold on Fudd being a better fit than Iriafen, They could offer Dallas a future first-round pick on top of the number 2 pick. Dallas drops one spot, still gets Iriafin, and adds an extra first-rounder for the future. Minnesota gets the player they really want. Both teams can feel good about that deal. What makes this all even more interesting is the expansion draft looming. The WNBA is growing, which means existing teams are going to lose players. Having a bunch of young talent on cheap rookie deals gives you options. You can protect your main guys and still have valuable pieces to trade. You can handle losing a veteran because you have young players ready to step up. Building up assets becomes absolutely critical when expansion is happening. Dallas gets it. Miller has been a GM and a coach for long enough to think 3 moves ahead. If he can flip one premium asset into 2 or 3 quality ones, he's creating the kind of roster flexibility that will pay off for years. And here's the thing about Paige Bueckers that changes the entire equation for Dallas. She is so good that they don't have to hit a grand slam with this pick. Obviously, they want to get the most value they can, but they aren't desperate. Indiana needed Caitlin Clark to be a savior because they had nothing. Dallas already has its superstar. Now they're just trying to optimize the roster around her. That's why Miller can take these calls with real interest instead of just being polite. He isn't guarding a franchise-altering player like Indiana was. He's weighing trade offers to see if any of them make his team better than just drafting Fudd would. The next few months leading up to the April draft are going to show us who's serious. Chicago just makes too much sense to ignore. Minnesota has the assets and the motivation if they have a strong preference for one player. And don't count out Washington, either. They've got the 4th pick and could package it to move up if they fall in love with Fudd or Iriafin. What we are seeing is the WNBA draft market finally growing up. Front offices are getting smarter, more creative, and more willing to make big moves. The Clark and Bickers drafts taught everyone that generational talents are off limits, but it also taught them that everything else is for sale. So, will Dallas actually trade the pick? Miller said they'll do what's best for the team, which is classic GM speak for we are open for business. My guess is they'll take calls right up to the last minute on draft night. Look at every real proposal and make a call based on whether any offer is clearly better than just taking Fudd. If Chicago puts Reese and the 5th pick on the table, that's a tough offer to turn down. If Minnesota offers a future first to swap spots, that's definitely worth thinking about. But if the offers aren't mind-blowing, they'll be perfectly happy to take Fudd, promote the UConn reunion, and build one of the most exciting young backcourts in the league. No matter what happens, the fact that we're even having this debate shows just how much the WNBA has evolved. 3 years ago, nobody was making these kinds of aggressive plays for top draft picks. Now teams are dialing in before the lottery results are even cold. That is progress. That's what it looks like when front offices treat their draft assets with the seriousness they deserve. What do you think Dallas should do? Should they take Azzi Fudd and build on that UConn connection, or trade the pick for a bunch of assets and supercharge the rebuild? And if you're running the Sky, how much are you willing to give up to move from 5 to 1? Let me know what you think down in the comments. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, and let's watch how this all unfolds. Because I can promise you one thing, this draft is about to be way more entertaining than anyone thinks.